Misha, Swing Low, Sweet Chariot is not a song that lacks emotional, historical, social, cultural weight.
I mean, honestly, I wish you'd put more pressure on me.
That's a heavy song. We already
You
did
haven't
it.
even asked a question yet.
I would never have said that before you sang it.
Oh, no.
So how do you approach a song like that?
Well, first of all, you have to approach every song with Aaron Davis, as far as I'm concerned. So we, sit down and just start feeling how this song makes us feel. And, these songs have such great bones that they can take so many different kinds of treatments. And Swing Low, I think, is more contemplative than people give it credit for. And the prayers and the earnestness with which the people who created these songs must have, approached life and especially their time to worship is it's something that I always have in the back of my mind, because we get to enjoy the fruits of such a laborious and unjust period of history. And it brought us such beauty in the traditional spiritual. So it's kind of this, the paradox of how incredibly beautiful it is, but it's also the hope is what's beautiful. Mm-hmm. Coming forth to carry me home. There's such hope in that, and that's what I kind of love about this collection of songs, this album, Songs of Freedom. But it's bigger than that. It's the fact that all of that had to happen in order for us to be sitting here, in order for me to be sitting here. It's a bigger scope, and yes, all of that is probably infused into this one collection of notes. And it's an astonishing thing, but there you have it.
But it's so rare for a song or any song, much less a collection of songs. Like you said, it has hope, but in that it has hope, it has pain.
Totally. It was dire times, and, you could argue that we faced these challenges then, but we face even larger predicaments as the world kind of shrinks in size and everybody's jockeying for position. I think we need to maintain a strong sense of hope and responsibility to each other. And I think that was what bound this movement together, this movement of anti-slavery or emancipation. I think a people will always find a way to free itself. And I think that is true, just as true then as it is now.
Some of these songs I describe as subtle. Like it's kind of like the template is there for you. They give you the bare bones of the song, and the songs are subtle at their core in terms of the notes that they choose, in terms of the range. Coming from opera, where you began and where you're best known, I mean, a lot of the pieces that you sang, the arias that you sang, not necessarily known for subtlety.
Well, I mean, certainly the range definitely allows you to just blow somebody's hair back.
Yeah.
But I think that the simplest, when you think of something like the Strauss Four Last Songs, those melodies aren't necessarily complicated. Oftentimes the orchestration or the harmonies used can be, pretty progressive, but at the bones of it, you've got a melody that everybody wants to hear. And I think when you decide to treat a piece that might seem simple,
like a spiritual,
like a Mozart song, like a spiritual, like a French melody or a folk song, anything that seems simple outright can usually end up being more complicated if you just let it take shape.
Yeah.
And I think most things that are surfacely simple, not unlike yourself, Tom Power, just reveal complexities unknown.
I'm an onion, Measha.
Layer after layer.
I'm an onion.
I can feel the layers peeling away.
Well, yeah, I think it's just getting warmer in here. As I mentioned, this album is a companion piece to a television series of the same name. I saw a little bit of it last night. So take me back to the start. Where did this project come from?
Well, the wonderful filmmaker Barbara Willis-Sweet approached me about a project that would essentially be a documentary about my genealogy, and would I curate the soundtrack. And I just finished recording my Christmas album, and so Aaron Davis and I had been up at the Chalet recording studios. And
where's that?
Up in where is it? It's I want to say Claremont.
Claremont?
It's possible up
Claremont
in
it is.
Claremont.
Yeah, the voice from the studio says Claremont.
And it's an incredible place to record. You're out in the country, and we were just kind of bunked up there, and and I could bring my babies, and I only had one baby then, but he was there, and so we went straight back into the studio after Barbara Willis-Sweet had approached me, and we recorded the second album of Spirituals, and we kind of worked things out prior to it, but some of the things we'd been doing on tour and some of the things we were kind of working out and had done for the film, but the collection of songs all kind of rolled into themselves because we have incredible musicians who agreed, blindly to be a part of this, who would all just come in for the Christmas album anyway. So when you're giving, Rob Pilch and Mark Rogers and Davide Dorenzo and all of these hard hitters, Kevin Turcotte, a chance to just crack at it.
Yeah.
Aaron found this harmonica god named what was the harmonica god's name? Somebody say it.
Carlos Del Junto?
Carlos Del Mother effing Junto. Like, the man was not human. You can say mother effing, right?
Yeah.
Mother loving?
Yeah.
Okay, so it was good.
You just can't say that. Yeah.
I can say mother and I can say loving.
Yeah, you can say mother loving all. You can say mother loving all day.
All day
That's a show
long.
called it. Yeah.
So it was a good time. It was a good time, and it was whenever you can record an album that almost records itself, you are in a pretty blessed place.
Yeah.
And I knew that it would. Whenever you're trying to embark on like a journey of hope or some kind of process that's meant to bring people happiness, you're always going to be met with resistance. It's always going to find challenges to keep you from staying happy and staying, the bigger the blessing, the more massive the burden. So I know how important this album is, especially now, and it took a minute for it to come out, and there was just so much negotiating, and I have amazing management, and the fact that this exists is, really in huge part to them.
But speaking of a blessed journey and a journey you took, the piece of your television series that I got to watch last night was a really personal journey for you. And you went to Cameroon after you discovered that your roots lie in the Bassa tribe in Cameroon, and you traveled to Africa. Tell me about that.
Well, it was just one of those times where you can't believe it's happening to you, and you feel completely connected to this experience that you've never had, and you have an ownership, like you're returning back to the place from which your family was stolen.
Yeah.
So my family was stolen probably somewhere in the beginning of the 1700s. A couple generations later, they were black loyalists who went and fought with the British and were granted emancipation, and then eventually sailed north to Nova Scotia, and we migrated even further north to New Brunswick.
Yeah.
And so that trajectory, to me, as I'm reading, Lawrence Hill's The Book of Negroes, and I'm like, oh my goodness, this is me. And it's like one of those things that I had never really sought out. I'm not like a familytree.com person. I don't go to the archives. It's not of any interest. I spent my life singing dead guys, so I do my own kind of anthropology in a certain sense.
Well, yeah, in order to sing some of these songs that you sing in the opera world, you do have to have a knowledge of the people who wrote them.
Yeah, you have a connection to history via your job and via your genuine interest in repertoire that suits you. But this film, I really did for my dad. I really did.
Is he still with us?
He's around. My parents are alive and loving the Kentville, Nova Scotia. Hello, New Minas Baptist Church. These things are these kinds of projects for me, these passion projects, and that allow me to reflect my faith while also contributing, I think, to kind of the lexicon of preserving this kind of repertoire. They are especially near and dear to my heart because my father, who had toiled and sacrificed, and like a lot of parents who make decisions for their kids that set them up in a much better place than they grew up in.
What did he do for a living?
Like, he worked for the CBC for 27 years, but he was an athlete before that.
That's toil.
Oh, that's bubble, toil and trouble. And but he stuck it out. God love you, CBC. And I, as a result, of his sacrifice and the sacrifice of my mother and all of this stuff, we as Gosman children have been given like a foundational springboard that has led us to this. Like I'm literally sitting here talking to the Tom Power on the CB Sizzle, and I can't even I can't measure. A quick way to get rich is to count your blessings. You know, and I'm tremendously wealthy.
Do you feel? I mean, did taking this trip? Maybe this is the question. Did taking this trip to Cameroon, discovering something about your past, and not even if you did know about it, but there's the difference between learning something intellectually and experiencing something.
Well, and also being there in a place where your blood has actually walked, and when we went to the outpost where the slaves were dragged onto the ships, like never have I been in such a dark place.
What did you feel?
I felt sick, and I felt guilty, and I felt just helpless by like just the fact that it had happened. It had already happened. There was nothing I could do to prevent it from happening, and yet here we sit, privileged as we are. Whether we like it or not, we are the 1% sitting here talking about all of the hardships of the past, and I felt a tremendous sense of, responsibility to a certain extent because, to whom much is given, much is expected. And so I just kind of want to take the bull by the horns. I don't know, life by the ball. It's like a carpe diem thing.
Do we hear that perspective? Do we hear that experience? Do we hear that journey in these songs on this record?
I mean, I think so. I mean, as much as I can make it real for anyone, but I think more we hear the universal struggle for ultimate liberation. I think as specific as my story is, in its specificity, it renders it more universal because there's no one who hasn't struggled. And when I was deciding how this album would run down, I took auditory clips from the film and inserted them in between the transitions. And as I was creating that narrative on top of the musical narrative, I really wanted it to highlight the ways in which we seek freedom, whether you came from the slave ships and fought for the British, or whether the Underground Railroad, or whether you just quit your job and started something new. You hear the beautiful French of the Cameroonian Bassa Mbomboks, who blessed me and cleansed me of the unrighteousness of the sins that happened to me in the past, and welcomed me back into the Bassa tribe. And they welcoming me was like a foregone conclusion. They were welcoming the daughter of the past who had been stolen from them and was righting a wrong by returning to her forefathers. Like, it was incredibly moving, and it is beyond my control the ripple effects that this album will have, the same way I couldn't have imagined that I would have been given an opportunity to go all the way back to Cameroon, where it all started for me and my family.
Measha Brueggergosman, it's been a pleasure to have you in, and thank you for singing.
You're welcome, Tom Power.
This is fun. Come back more often, will you?
I will, and stay here. I like you here.
Thank you, Measha. Appreciate that.